Hey, Bobby Motor.
Hey, my name is Riley.
Hey everybody, this is Michael and you're listening to Speculo Live. Here we are live here. Thank you all for joining us. This is Speculo Live episode. I believe we're on 15, Riley, and I know that you're not a new face, but you're a new face for the first time in multiple months. We've been fortunate enough to Bobby and I running through a bunch of stuff. We've had some guests on since then as well. We had John Bowler on, and now we're fortunate enough to have another guest episode here with Remington Ramsey. Yeah, I'm just looking now. It looks like it is number 15, which is awesome.
Yeah.
We've made it, man. The average podcast doesn't make it past 13 episodes. So we're two past and we're rising.
There we go.
So, but again, Remington, thank you so much for joining us, man. For those who don't know, Remington is part of the Real Producers ecosystem, and which is an incredible publication. If you're not familiar with it, you definitely should sign yourself up to start consuming their content because they are really at the forefront. Every event that Riley and I or Bobby and I have gone to, we've had a chance to come across Remington. He's always at these panels. He's always at all these top speaking events, and I'm really excited to have you, Remington. I think you're going to bring a lot of content that is new to some people, but I think as well, we're going to talk about this upcoming event you have that's super exciting at the end of the month. So thank you so much, man. Why don't you give us like a couple minutes of who you are, why you're here, and, for those who don't know you, why should they get to know you?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited. We had to push this back because Riley was riding across the country on a bicycle. So, and I was doing 75 hard. What were you doing, Michael? You're the most fit of all of us.
Dude, I don't know about that. I just get up and do kettlebells and then chase kids around. That's pretty much it.
Man, that's a buzzword.
Yeah.
Kettlebells. You're not cool unless you're doing kettlebells in this day and age.
Well, I don't know. Riding 100 miles is pretty cool. I can honestly say I've never.
Are you still sore?
Dude, I would say yes. I definitely am still sore. I would say I'm more mentally sore. I don't think I'm ever going to get on a bike again. I mean, it was fun. It's definitely one of those. A couple of the buddies I did it with have done like Ironmans and marathons and stuff like that. And like we all have a very specific track record of like we'll go work really hard, get something done, and then we'll never do that thing again.
Yeah.
So I love the bike. I thought it was great. I thought it was really fun. But sitting on a bike for 100 miles, man, like you get off and it feels like you're on another planet. I mean, it's the weirdest. You just feel like gravity is not even a real thing when you stand on a bike after that.
I totally get that. I mean, when you do something massive like that, you start to lie to yourself while you're on the bike, like or like a treadmill. You're like,
yes.
At least when I'm running long distance on a treadmill or just like outside, I'm like, okay, I only have 1 mile left. And you get to the mile and you're like, okay, now one more left. Or you have 20 miles left when you only have one. Like I just lie to myself to get through it at some point.
It was, similar situation, dude. We were running and it was like, we didn't really start counting or paying attention until mile 90, and mile 90 felt like the full 8 hours. It took us about 7.5, 8 hours to get it done. By mile 90 felt like the entire 8 hours. I mean, it was, wow. The last 10 miles were crazy, but nonetheless, it was fun. It was an enjoyable experience, but enough about me and my biking. Tell us about Ramsey.
Well, I'm excited to be on the show and talk about all the things. I met you guys live and in person at Inman, which is interesting given like what we're going to talk about today, because my story starts with events. I was essentially a closing gift specialist. I was selling Cutco knives. That's the part that everyone loves about my story because everyone's got their own Cutco story. When you're in college, you either, get recruited and sell a knife to your parents and quit, or you keep going, or you have a friend that you make fun of for selling knives. So I was that guy. And I was trying to sell more knives to realtors because there was a specialty division that was doing that. It still exists today. And I broke all the records and was crushing it. And I looked at my bank account at the end of the year and it was, suffering because I realized I was spending all my money back into the business trying to figure out who the top realtors were and get in front of them. And it was difficult because like in Indianapolis, there's 10,000 realtors. And half of them will sell one or less homes. And so I was going on a bunch of, lunches where I'm spending too much money to try to impress this realtor who's the number one realtor in Carmel. And I find out the next day they sold like 2 houses a year before and they lied on Facebook. Like I didn't even know you could lie on Facebook. So
like, wait, you could do that? That's allowed?
Yeah, exactly. So I guess there's like, you guys probably have spy software now that AI will detect when a realtor is lying on Facebook. So anyway, flash forward to events. I started hosting my own events to correct this problem because I would go to these events where there was no value. And I think that like if you look at a massive event structure like Inman, there's years where people think Inman crushes it. There's years where people think Inman's like suffering. I think there was this year a disappointment about the content because it was so AI focused. So you go into the vendor hall and every single vendor was an AI vendor, like 90% of them. And everything on stage was talked about before with the same speakers and the same content. And I think that Inman will probably pay attention to that and make some shifts and do something different for next year. At least I would like to think they would. For me, as a vendor that consumed these events or sponsored these events, I was frustrated because I would go and I didn't have the deep pockets or a company backing me. I paid everything out of pocket when I was with Cutco. And so I would spend $500 to $1,000 of my own money that I did not have at the time to get to one of these events and have a booth. And then they'd give me this card that's like, or this stamp. And they say, hey, whenever they bring the card around, you're going to stamp it and say they came to your booth. I'm like, sweet, I'm going to meet every single realtor. Well, not only did that not happen, but the ones that came up to me only cared about the stamp to get a bag of candy at the end instead of actually engage in my conversation. And I remember sitting there being very frustrated looking at all the other vendors, and I had nothing to sell them, and I was spending all my time with them. And there was a light bulb. Hey, if we could actually create an event worth attending and value being brought from both sides, would people come to that? So my first event, I hosted it at the Cutco store, which we had one of those in Indy. There's not very many of them, but I had that advantage. And I was like, okay, we're going to give away, it was right around Thanksgiving. We're going to give away a turkey and a knife every 15 minutes. And we're just going to see who comes. And I had well over 100 agents there and sold more knives in that one day than I had the previous month. And I thought I did something illegal. I looked up the rules to see if this was allowed. And I was like, okay, I guess this is what I'm doing now. And so flash forward, I created the magazine to be a face for the events where essentially we'd host these local events and then we'd have a monthly magazine that came out and it would only go to the real estate agents that were in the top 500 agents based on volume. And so what that did is it took away the agents that were wasting my time because they weren't even capable of buying my gifts yet because they haven't been established, they weren't full time, or they were new, whatever. And there's nothing wrong with those agents, but as a vendor, you can't spend too much time with those people because there's nothing for them to buy from you. And so I realized that all the other vendors in the room had that same struggle. And that's when Real Producers was born. And so that was one of one in Indianapolis. And if you flash forward, we've scaled to 150 of those cities 10 years today.
Wow, that's great. I mean, way to take a learning experience and turn it into something bigger, right? Like, I think that's the thing is you can only grow based on, the lessons you learn from being that entrepreneur, putting yourself out there. I mean, obviously you were in the hustle, you were in the grind, but most people just sit there and go, it's going to pay off. It's going to pay off. It's going to pay off. But the ones that actually change the face are the ones that are like, yes, and right. Yes, I can be at these things and there's a better way to do this. So
it's interesting.
Well, that's great, man. I love that.
It's interesting listening to that story too, Remington, because I think outside of just real estate or AI or tech or, events, I'm, talking just specifically on entrepreneurship like Michael just did. I think something that I always personally notice when, whether it's content you see on TikTok or a book that you read or something like that, one of the main messages you hear is just stick it out, right? You're going to work for 10 years before you make one dime. But what not a lot of people talk about is pivoting, right? Like how intelligent do you have to be and what are the cues you look for to pivot? And it sounds like your cue was looking at all the other vendors in whatever event it was where people were running around with their little, card to get a stamp on and seeing that those other vendors were probably just as frustrated as you were. Right. And kind of like I'm not getting anything from this guy who's next to me. We're all fighting for attention. But at the end of the day, the agents only give a shit about the bucket of candy at the end. And we're not really winning here. Right. So I'd like to learn more. I have a question following that, which is when you're looking at that pivot, like for a vendor event, it sounds like events is really where you have thrived in the past, right? And what RPL Bait's going to be, which we're going to talk about here in a bit. What's that pivot that you're seeing that a lot of these events need to have, or the cue that should show them that pivot is necessary for agents and vendors to really get a lot of value? Because as we move into this next era of real estate, you talk about Zoom, you talk about virtual, all that stuff. What is that pivot, dude? What is that thing that's going to really show people value in these events?
I got a great answer for this. And this is not just an answer that applies to what you're saying. It applies to everyone who's trying to do better in their business and pay attention to what is happening around them, is the ability to take feedback. No one does this well. I say no one. It feels like no one does this well. It's like truly ask for feedback and then do what they say. So like if you look at Real Producers, I was just trying to sell more knives. I wasn't trying to create a magazine that was going to be income. That was cool, and I was excited about that. For me, I was trying to correct a problem, which was I couldn't get in front of the right agents. And I was like, maybe I'll make some like money on both sides. Like that's the entrepreneur answer. Like, hey, now I can make money off of vendors and sell more knives, and now I'm like doubling my profits. I wasn't trying to start something new with and just give up I thought I was going to sell knives forever. And like, if you look at kids like that if you ask a kid between the age of 5 and I don't know, 12. If you would ask my generation, what do you want to be when you grow up? We still wanted to be astronauts, presidents, NBA players, cowboys. Like that was our answer. What's the answer today? Like what do kids want to be? You guys know the answer? Like there's a one answer that's at the top of the list.
No, I have no idea.
It's a YouTuber. It's like ultimately an entrepreneur. Like they see these kids who are just sitting in basements and collecting paychecks, and that's like 1% of the 1%. And so like the next generation of entrepreneurs that's coming up thinks that you can just get into entrepreneurship. And like you said, like, hey, it's going to be 10 years before you see the turn of a profit. I don't think that's true. I think you need to get into the boring space. Like you need to figure out what space you want to be into, pay attention to what's not going well or what people are frustrated with, and then solve that problem. But you can't do that unless you get into the space. And so, as you know, there's a huge shortage of people who need apprentice, like the boring jobs, the sweat equity, like plumbers and electricians. Like,
Yep.
you could be an electrician or a plumber, be an apprentice for a couple years and have very little debt versus going to school and getting $100,000 of debt and then paying that off with a job that doesn't even pay as much as those plumbers now. Like there's been a huge flip. And so to get back to your question of like, essentially what the pivot needs to be for events, I have my ideas on what that could be, but where I'd start is literally asking the people what they think you should. Because when I started Real Producers, I went to 50 real estate professionals and I said, here's what I'm thinking about a magazine and events. Can you tell me everything you read in magazines, what you hate about magazines? Can you tell me what would be exciting to learn about? And so then you got to take everything with a grain of salt, because if you ask someone, hey, do you like magazines? Their answer might be no, but they've never read a magazine like this, and the answer might be yes. So you just got to pay attention to what the actual feedback is. And I think most of us are too proud or egotistical to actually listen to somebody and actually make the change that they're suggesting.
Yeah, look, you're 100% right. I mean, and we're seeing that's a combination of awareness and population density, right? We're seeing these baby boomers that are all retiring and they're leaving these businesses. Cody Sanchez runs an incredible entity off of that entire thing, and I think she's 100% right. And that's clearly the proof is in the pudding. In that, a lot of these people that have these businesses and now their kids are like, I don't want to be a plumber, Dad. Even though your business is making $2 million a year in profit, I want to be on YouTube. And you're just, that lack of foresight really comes down to like, are you really doing it for the to posture, to make that presence like, look how important I am, or are you actually wanting to make money, right? And so I think too there's a difference in like the monetary drive that a lot of these kids have. They want the things without the work. And so the thing is like, if I do that, I could do it, but how I'm going to have to be underneath somebody's sink. I'm going to have to be going to people's houses. I'm going to have to be managing people. I'm going to have to, all the things that come with just being in a face-to-face business. There genuinely seems like people just are afraid to have human engagement. And I think that's why events are so crucial. Like we love going to events. We work those events more ways than just trying to get clients. We love to just go and learn and educate. And I think as well, like that's how you really establish those relationships. We're very referral based in our business, but a lot of that has come off the trust we built from face-to-face engagement. And that's where we thrive. So no, I love that. That's the foundation, how it's created. I think that makes it stronger, right? That why is a lot more prominent. Let's talk about this event because, obviously this isn't your first one, but I got to be honest, looking through this list of speakers, you have curated some exceptionally talented brains just in the real estate space. Like, was it always that way from day one, or like, did it take a bit to get to that place? So how did you suddenly get to this position where, you've got the Molly Blooms and Tom Ferrys and Rory Vadens of the world on stage with you right beside your brand?
A great question. So we grew as a company one by one. And we used to get that question all the time. Hey, how did you grow so fast? And now, like, because we're kind of established, like, the year 5 was pretty incredible because we were in like 50 locations in 5 years. And like, that was pretty unheard of. And the reason we scaled so quickly was 2 things. One, the product really was that good. It was focused on local. So like if you picked up a Nashville Real Producers magazine, everyone in Nashville really cared about it and nobody else did. Like Charlotte didn't care, San Diego didn't care, Orlando didn't care, because it was all for those people. When you get that hyper local, when you get that niche, people really care about it, because it's like, I want to see my name in face and print, and everyone else I see on this, like I'm opening it up, I know all these people. Like, and so when I first started back in 2015, people said print is dead. Like I heard that more often than anything, like print is dead. And at the time, like I didn't really know how to handle that. And over the first year, I realized print wasn't dead. Like what people are printing was dead. Like the newspapers are dying because they're printing the same thing you can find online way quicker and play Candy Crush at the same time on your phone. And if you can print, basically what we did is we took Facebook and made Facebook in print. So it only applies, that niche product, that niche community only applies to them. And so as we begin to scale and grow, the real estate agents who normally pay for everything, a real estate agent, when they pick up their phone, they stop answering everyone wonders why real estate agents stop answering their phone and like, hey, I'm trying to give you money for a deal. Well, the last 5 calls they took was a vendor trying to sell them something.
Yeah.
And so when you can call a real estate agent and say, I just want to, like, we don't charge them a single thing. We made that rule a long time ago. Like that's part of our fabric. We don't let realtors advertise or pay to be on the cover, and we don't let brokerages advertise or pay for anything, because we realize that if we do this for free for them, we'll make our money elsewhere from the vendors and the people, the partners. But if we start taking the money from Remax or Keller Williams, then the validity of whoever's actually being on the cover or featured is taken away. Yeah. And now we're not trusted. But I would tell you right now, like we are one of the most trusted brands in real estate, period, because of that one move that we made. Yeah. And so as we scaled, we start getting the eyeballs and the attention from the top realtors in every single part of the country. Well, now when you host an event, so you're talking about RP Elevate. If you go to rplelevate.com and go to the speaker list, it's pretty incredible. Every single person that is on the stage has been on our show, has been on our podcast, the Real Producers podcast. So you can actually see them ahead of time if you want to see what you're going to hear about on stage, or like these people. But these are the number one, like the top 10 realtors in every city have been featured in our magazine for free. So when I call them and say, hey, will you speak for us? Not one of them asked to be paid, which is pretty crazy. Like they're like, yep. Jonathan Spears says, tell me when and where. Suman Kim, yep, I'll be there. I'll move whatever. We'll be there, because they want to support what we're doing because of what we did for them in the first place.
Are you?
Go ahead.
No, I love that. I think there's a couple of things there that I think everyone that's listening should understand and should be rolling into their business. And we have been doing this too, is just power statements, defining statements that identify you as a core belief of who you are. And I think that too many times people tend to pull back from the option to do that for fear of persecution around that thought, right? We have power statements that we believe in fully, saying the most powerful AI in real estate, that we confidently communicate that we would stack up our pay-per-click ecosystem against anyone in the industry, right? That we fully believe that we are the number one AI platform in real estate. Identifying those power statements is a core belief for us, but it's not just something we're doing from a marketing perspective. It's because we work diligently to do that. You just had a power statement there where you said you are the most trusted brand in real estate, and I think that's a model that you're describing there too. Give, and then ask, right? That's a Gary Vaynerchuk approach. And I think that that's something that a lot of people miss in their real estate business. I think that, just going for the sake of getting a client versus the 5, 6, 8, maybe sometimes 12 months of engagement continually, of driving value for people, has a massive long-term opportunity, no matter what your vision is. And I love that you hold true to that, because clearly that's the case. Like people see that what you're saying is true, and for it to be true, they're showing up for you. And I think that that's a huge, huge thing that you don't see. I agree with you. I think that there's too many brands out there driving news that are not brand agnostic, whether they pitch themselves or not. The reality is you can very clearly say and see by who they're putting on stage that there's clearly some stuff there that doesn't align, right? So I love that you say that. I think that's great.
I also want to add something to this, just to shout out the conversations, Remington, you and I have had. Like we do not, overgrowing our company over the last 5 years. We're not a funded company, right? We bootstrapped everything over the last 5 years. Started with my buddy and I in a college dorm room, and now it's turned into this. And we almost never sponsor events. The first event we went, it's funny, the first event we sponsored was year one. And it was an event in Florida that we flew our photographer and videographer out. We flew out there, we were wearing full suits. We put together a whole big booth, set up everything. And all it was realtors coming around with their little Mark 6, thing, catching, coming in and saying, oh, I need to put a sticker, I need to put an X through, this booth that I visited so I can get my prize at the end, right? And the woman next to us baked homemade cookies. And so we were already at a loss when we showed up and sat up next to her. And so it was just one of those situations where immediately I was like, man, events, like, I don't give a shit about that. I'm not doing this, right? I'm not sponsoring events. I'm just going to go meet people in the lobby, right? LobbyCon all day long. We chose to sponsor RP Elevate because, one, you have this history of throwing amazing events, but this is RP Elevate's first year, and you guys have some amazing speaker lineups. There's already buzz on social media. Clients of ours that I had no idea were related to Real Producers are posting about it and getting excited about it. I actually texted one of our clients about the giveaway we're going to do at the end of this podcast to ask if they wanted one of the tickets, and they said, dude, I'm already going. My whole team's already going to be there. So it's one of those things where, like, we chose to sponsor this because you've got this buzz around the event. And just for us, I think we are not big on events, and we decided that we were going to do this because of what you curated. So more than anything, just a shout out to you, because I think the sponsor, the events, the opportunities, everything, it's going to be epic.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I appreciate you sharing that. And the funny thing about feedback is, like, so the feedback, like, that's part of my story. I wrote a book that came out in January. It hit bestseller in March. And the first chapter talks about, like, that story I just told you about being a vendor and sitting there and being frustrated about the card with stamps. And you've brought it up too. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, it wasn't the stamps. That was not a bad idea. Getting traffic there, like, stuff like that, we might actually do. But the difference is who is in the room and what are they enticed to do at your booth. Like, when I go to some of these other national events like NAR, and I love NAR, I think they've done a lot of good. I think they got their teeth kicked in the last 2 years, and they're really having a brand identity issue. And it's an opportunity for people like us at Real Producers to come in and remind people that we don't have an identity issue. We are trusted, and the people that we're going to put in the room are the ballers. Why does that matter? Because if I'm someone who doesn't receive the magazine, I don't do 10 million a year. Like in Indianapolis, like, let's say I'm number 7,000 out of 10,000 realtors, and I sold, like, I don't know, $1 million worth of real estate. The people that I go to get answers about how I should build my business are on this list. So having the top 500 realtors from every part of the market, everyone pays attention to the decisions that they make. So when you have an event where it's just those people in the room, people are like, I want to be like that person. So what are they doing? Are they using Speculo? Are they going with Michael? Are they going with Riley? Because I'm going to follow them because I want to be like them. And so it's not that we're an elitist product. It's that we know that if you start to capture the eyeballs of the people at the top, the ones that are making the decisions, they're also influencing every other decision.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. I love that. So when you're looking at your stack of speakers at RP Elevate, obviously we're an AI company, and a lot of our content we like to talk about on these lives and on these podcasts is, what do you see in our guests that we invite? What do you see happening with AI? I think one of the things that I like most about what you're saying is trust and being a trusted brand, which tells me that you're not somebody to jump on a fad or jump on the bandwagon to go talk about something to get eyeballs. It's more about bringing the quality to people and making sure that they're engaging with stuff that matters, and your brand is bringing them valuable content. So I'm very, very, very curious from you on, what is your dialogue around AI? Because a lot of people are hopping on the bandwagon and chasing the fad without knowing a lot about it to get eyeballs. And I think hearing you talk about trust as a core in your brand, tell me about how you're integrating AI into your conversations, into your brand, or into your event.
Yeah, I think the buzzword or buzz sentence is AI will not replace agents, but agents that use AI will replace those who don't. I've heard that from so many people in the last 2 months. I think, I don't know who coined that, but they should be making a ton of money off of it.
Yeah, seriously.
One of the agents that is speaking at RP Elevate, his name is Eric Forney. He's actually here in the Indianapolis market with me, and I met him for lunch. And he's always someone who's ahead of the game. He actually is one of 2 people that wrote the book on AI for Keller Williams. So, like, this guy knows what he's talking about. And to get to the lunch, he drives a Tesla. The Tesla actually drove him while he was working. He was the first person that I ever heard of that instead of delivering earnest money, he had Uber start to deliver his earnest money. He's like, I don't have time for this. Uber will deliver the earnest money for me. So like things that I think will become commonplace, he's always ahead on. And so having people like that in the room to explain from their own perspective how this is already happening. I think about the average age of a real estate agent is 56 years old. Okay. Yeah. And it's getting younger a little bit, but it's been 55 or 56 for the last 10 years that I've been in real estate. And the early adopters are going to be your 25 to 35-year-olds just because of like how fast the world moves. There's going to be a real need because what you're seeing in teams, like the big brokerages are buying up all the, like you're seeing the teams getting bigger and the brokerages getting bigger. The little guys are getting gobbled up. And that's the number one trend that I think we're going to see in the next 5 years is how you have to align with a bigger brand to stay relevant. And I think AI is at the center of that conversation. If I'm a 55, 65, 75-year-old realtor, the likelihood that I'm going to understand and adopt these things versus the younger person on my team that I'm trying to sell my business to or retire and give my business to, you need to have someone on your team that is keeping up with the AI trends so that your business keeps up. Because if you don't, again, you're going to be left behind. Just like the guy who, I think Gary Vaynerchuk said the guy that bought 100 horses the day before the Model T was invented just lost because you're heavily invested in the past. And so you would think for years, everyone just rode horses. So like, I don't need to worry about that. As soon as the car was invented, horses, became obsolete. So I think it's the same thing with our business today. So the AI conversation, while we're not going to have every vendor in the room at RP Elevate and every message be about AI, one thing I think we're doing that's really cool is one of our sessions is actually an exchange model where instead of talking from stage and telling people what they need to know about AI, it's actually roundtable discussions on what they're actually physically doing in their business and then crowdsourcing the wisdom from the room and then going up on the whiteboards and actually sharing the best thing from each table. I'm pretty pumped about that.
I love that. Wow. Okay. That's a great concept.
And that leads kind of me into my next thing. So obviously, as someone that is, familiar with the events ecosystem, familiar with putting content together that drives value, I want to know from your thoughts and expertise, what would you say? Because there's obviously brokerages right now that are running events for their agents, right? You mentioned Eric Forney's and the Keller Williams ecosystem. They have their model where the market centers are hosting individual education sessions for agents all the time. So what would you say are some key factors that these leaders should be putting together that not only draws attention, but has people leaving to go, wow, that was great value. I'm glad I was here.
Specifically around AI or just content?
In general, we don't even need to touch on AI. Just in general, what is some advice that you would give?
Qdoba.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. Like it's funny. I kid you not. Like for whatever reason, at least in Indianapolis, if I offered agents free Qdoba, they'd show up to the events like that. Like I think everyone's got wore out on pizza.
Have Chipotle lined up. All right. Point one. Good meals. Got it.
Okay, so here's my answer, and like we could have 10 different podcasts with 10 different answers, but for some reason this is just where my head went. We just had Aaron Luden on the podcast. He's my Orlando branding agency. He's my Orlando franchise. He's one of my top 5 franchises in Real Producers, but he was a big deal before Real Producers existed. He started with me at Cutco and just has been coaching people on branding and marketing. He was on the show to talk about events and what events actually do for your business. And it's kind of like gifting someone a book. When you guys might not know this, when you physically, I love giving books. It's a great price point and it's value-based. So I love to give out books. I give them to everybody. I'll probably send you guys a book. People attribute what they learn when they read a book. There's a book right here by Joey Coleman, Never Lose a Customer. I've written a couple webinars off of this. When I give this to you, studies show that you actually attribute what you learn from this book to me over Joey. Isn't that wild? So when you start, it's the same thing with events. When you start coaching people on concepts that other people, like we're all stealing from each other, like there's no new concepts. There's very few, at least. When you are basically teaching somebody, they're going to attribute the knowledge of that to the person who gave it to them over whoever came up with it. And so that's what I would strongly advise you is to have an idea of what can you nail. Can you nail the small event experience? Can you nail the large event experience? When people leave that, are they excited to be a part of it and talking about you outside of it? And so I created a document that I give to all of our people, which is the before, during, and after event. And it's all based around what we were talking about earlier, Riley, with feedback. Because I think what people like to do is they throw an event, and then instead of asking for feedback on it, they ask for praise or testimonials, and then they move on. They should be asking for actual feedback. Because if you get 10 people to a seminar, which, by the way, it's hard to get anyone to show. It's hard to get someone to show up for a lunch, man. Like, it's hard to get one person to show up. So you get 10 people in a room, and you do the thing, and you give the subjects or whatever afterwards. If you're actually asking them, hey, what would have made this better, and ask them very specific questions on that so that you can improve for the next one, I think that's where we're mixing out. So like, if I had to give advice, I know this is very general, but I think we miss it. If you actually ask for feedback on how to improve and then throw the next one, then that's the metric that I would be excited about, is did I get 12 people to engage this time, and stop worrying about like the next guy who got like 20 people. Like we're in this comparison game, and it kills us.
Yeah. Wow. That's really interesting. I was going to say Speculo is considering starting up, throwing some events, like more like local events, but small ones. Like our niche that I personally would like to get into is like maximum 25 people, and exactly what you just described, very conversational type event, not like throwing a speaker up on stage to coach you about something, more about like, hey, we've got these 10 topics, all 25 people bring what they're doing related to these 10 topics, and we're just going to have a total, just communicating with each other, putting numbers on the board, really engaging. So we might be talking to you about how to actually do that, because we have not. I don't come from events. I've never done events. I've never thrown one myself.
I have one more thing to add. I don't know how you incorporate this, but you have to have humor. There has to be points of the event where people are laughing and smiling. You don't have to be funny. Like, there's meme accounts on the internet that exist solely where they just share meme of the day, and they'll find a meme and post it. Right. It's possible that guy who posts those memes is not funny, but he finds this funny, and now he is like cultivating a community of people that also think that meme is funny, and now they're attributing that to whoever this guy is. So people hear that and they're like, oh, you're so funny. Like, I can't be like that. You don't have to be, but you have to acknowledge the fact that when people laugh, they trust you. It's crazy, but it's true. Like, they trust you. Their wall is broken down, and they have an easier time listening to what you're saying about other things. And I just think about CE. Man, I've never been a real estate agent, but like CE would be like I'm out. Like, that would keep me from like wanting, because of how boring the options are and how like lack of excitement. That, I mean, it's so easy to add humor, just like break up the monotony with like a funny movie clip or something like that. It's just a minor little detail that I just thought I'd throw in there.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with being the YouTubers of the world. There's some great people creating content right now. There's a guy named Bob Tompkins who's a real agent with the Real Brokerage. Creates some incredibly funny content, like unbelievably funny content, and stuff that I've shared with my team and my agents and stuff, just to bring some levity to, what can be a monotonous role, or it can be boom and bust. And, just bring we're seeing a lot of that in our industry, which I absolutely love. It humanizes everything that everyone's going through. So I think that's a great point. Yeah. There's definitely a chemical response that comes from that humor side of things that reminds people where that came from, and that it definitely attaches them to remembering, oddly enough, the education they learned in those specific sessions.
For sure.
No, I love that. That's great. Yeah. Is that a proprietary thing, that before, during, and after event doc, or would you want to share that to our listeners? If someone sent me, hey, I want to absorb some of that content.
Yeah, I mean, I can find a basic template. Essentially, for our people, there's things in there that the events that we're hosting are typically social events. When I first started, I was like, I'm not going to do education-based local events, at least. Like the one that we're doing in Dallas, that's education-based. But typically, they're like, I was tired of going to the boring, stuffy events. And I'm like, ultimately, we need to create a community where people are just excited to be in the room.
Yeah.
When COVID first hit, it was the first time Indy had multiple buyers, like a hot market where there was multiple buyers like on every listing, and there was deals being accepted because of relationships over the actual package. So I had this guy named Alan Williams, who's now the #1 realtor or #2 in Indianapolis. And he sat on a panel for me and said, I go to all the real estate socials. Like, I want to know every single realtor in this room, because a lot of people are like, why would I want to be in a room full of real estate agents? I can't sell them a house,
Sure.
which is a really funny thing to say. And there's a reason why they're not selling as much as the guy who is, because what he did is he established those relationships. And then when COVID hit, and then the market blew up for like the next 12 months, especially in Indianapolis, probably Columbus, some of the Midwest towns that were still trying to catch up to like Nashville and Charlotte. Well, you started seeing some of these acceptance offers like not as sexy. Like his packages were like not cash deals or, like contingencies or whatever. But since they trusted Alan, since they knew him and they knew that he would get the job done, he won over better package deals. And so I think that same thing is going to happen with this conversation with events, where like you're going to see a lot of people realize that there's a lot of value in just being in the room with like networking with these people. Yeah. And so the document says, how do you get people there? What do you do while they're there? And then how do you capitalize after the fact? Because you can dominate a social media cycle pretty easily if you throw a great event.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's great, man. I mean, those two things that you mentioned right off the bat, obviously more nuggets in that before, during, and after event talk. Number one is ask for feedback. I think that's a huge thing. So making sure that I would almost add in there that ask for feedback in engaging ways, right? Don't just send them the doc and say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your experience, right? Like that doesn't really give you actionable, honest feedback. And then I think too, like having that humor is super important. Well, I mean, look, your event is September 29th and 30th in Dallas. Let's talk about this lineup. People can go to rpelevate.com to get tickets. We're fortunate enough that Remington's been kind enough to throw us 2 tickets that we're going to give away. We're going to have a couple ways to do that here, but let's talk about that event. Who is you've got some incredibly powerful people here. Number one, Molly Bloom. I had a chance to see Molly, great speaker. If you don't know who she is, she wrote the memoir, and there was a movie about it called Molly's Game. Tom Ferry. I mean, if you don't know who Tom Ferry is, then I would encourage you to Google it. And you're in the real estate business. I mean, talk about a guy that throws some incredible events, but just like a juggernaut in the teaching industry. Rory Vaden, a great guy that obviously talks about, strategy, your brand. Talk to me about how you curated this lineup.
Well, you just mentioned our headliners. You mentioned our keynotes, and honestly, they're going to crush it, and people are going to take a lot away. I think when all is said and done, the agents might even find more value in is like the breakouts with the realtors who are like the #1. We have a panel for YouTube, which is the number 1, 2, and 3 basically of YouTube views for real estate agents. Ken Posick, Suman Kim, Sarah Maslowski. They're all, I guess they're all in this like underground club that I didn't know about. So they all know each other.
Yeah.
But I mean, like those types of subject lines where it's like, how do you retire in real estate? No one talks about that. There's no breakouts at any of these other events that we've mentioned that's like showing you how to retire in real estate, and that's one of ours. It's like how do you build a business that you can actually sell or succeed? How do you use downsizing? Downsizing is a really interesting thing that we've been discussing on our show around like the silver tsunami of seniors. This baby boomers that are starting to, not only from their lifestyle and like selling their houses and going into different communities, but also selling their businesses, which I think is what you were talking about earlier with Cody Sanchez. And so you're seeing for the first time in history, business owners not giving their business to their kids, and so they're selling to big corporations, and that's a huge missed opportunity for that next level. And so these kids who don't want mom and pop's shop are staying in their parents' basement until they're, early 30s and trying to get famous on YouTube. And so the buyer is getting older and older. We're starting families later and later. And so if you don't know all this or why it's happening, you're not going to be as prepared in your business and in real estate. And so we're having breakouts around not only understanding that dynamic, but then how to build your business knowing all this. So that's what I'm excited about. I think the main stage is going to be killer. You mentioned Molly. I'm actually what's funny is we're flying into Dallas early the week before, and Molly and I are both headlining a different event for loan officers. So it's going to be a fun week.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about it.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got some great panels here around creating culture. As you mentioned, dominating downsizing, I think is awesome. Obviously, that YouTube is entire panel is just a series of top performing contributors, which is awesome. I mean, what else did we not ask you? I mean, what else would you say that you're excited to see, not only from your event, but just the industry as a whole, what we're moving towards? What are you starting to see as trends?
The big thing that I think affects everything is the trend towards bigger teams, bigger brokerages, bigger teams. And I think that's okay. Like if I were to start as an agent, 10 years ago, like the real question is like, do I be a sole agent or do I hop on a team? And even then I think I would have said that the smarter thing is to hop on a team, be an apprentice and learn it from the top and maybe even get a lead or two. But I think now it's really necessary to align with the right brand and the right team for your own mental state. I mean, man, showing up every single day and liking the people you work with and the leadership. That was a question when I was selling knives. I was in my mid-20s and like everyone wanted to recruit me. Instead of buying knives from me, they're like, you should be a realtor, and then give me their like 5-point plan. And so I received that question a lot in my I don't so much anymore, but in my 20s, everyone's like, if you had to join a brokerage, which one would it be? And so I wrote a piece about it. And the ultimate thing that mattered to me the most was leadership, because things are going to change. Like you've got brands at the top, like Century 21, I think is a dying brand from tech standpoint. I think they know that. They're trying to make some changes there. A Coldwell Banker is non-existent in the Midwest and huge on the coast. So like there's just different brand dynamics that I've learned more as I've gotten into the national scene. And I think that aligning with a brand that gets the future, but then also the local leadership that I can get behind really matters. And so that would be my tip, is to do as an agent, in this moment, is my brand and what I care about lined up with those two things, my local leadership and the national brand? If the answer is no on either of those, I think you have a really hard discussion with yourself.
Interesting. Love it. That's great, man. Yeah. All the conversations we're having with various teams, et cetera, we're seeing the leaders of those teams really focus on functionally, how do I support my agents at the highest level, right? It's funny. We're seeing a lot of those teams as well, going from 80 agents down to 40 very diligent, focused agents, and then pouring into them with
more profitable. That's one of the craziest things. Like, I just want to add to that, Michael, because like there's been many teams we've talked to that sold 400 homes. One in particular we just recently spoke with sold 450 homes last year with, I think it was 25, 30 agents in between there. Now they're down to about 12, and they're on track to sell about 500 this year.
Yeah.
So it's like the fact that you sell more houses with less agents. Why is that? More efficient, processes and strategies, more bought in individuals who are more aligned with where you want to go. I think you say this all the time, Michael, which I love. It's like you want your agents to do what's best for them underneath your ecosystem. You're not necessarily creating a culture of, well, if you want to be here, you have to do this. I think you're the best person to bring that up. But Michael, say what you always say around your team and your agents that are on your team.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we focused a lot on meeting our agents where they're at, right? And so was that culturally a good fit for us when we interviewed our agents of, can we get you where you need to go? And, if somebody is coming in as a new agent, they're like, well, I need a lot of hand holding. I don't know how to work a sphere. I don't, that's fine. It's all well and good, but they'd probably be better serviced in that larger team that you talk about, Remington. Like finding somebody that's got 100,000 person database versus us, we're more in that space. We're very sphere focused already from a leads perspective. We don't do a lot of marketing spend in the ecosystem of realtor.com or Zillow, but our leads convert at a higher percentage. So really, when those agents come to us and we establish our team goals, our whole focus is like, yes, focus on, getting the leads that we give to you. That's fine as part of your overall goals, ecosystem, but it's not going to be 80% of your goals are going to be achieved through our leads. You should be focusing on building your own sphere. We can give you all the tools on how to build your sphere, engage with your sphere, continually nurture your sphere and convert on your sphere. But, we're not going to be the one to spend $100,000 on Zillow. And, ideally you're just going to get a crap ton of leads. And so I think when you do exactly what you're talking about, which is find that team ask them those questions. Here's where my plans are. And based on my plans, does that align with who you are culturally and structurally as a team, right? Otherwise, you're going to be spinning your wheels. You're going to get frustrated. So
I love that.
making sure that that's a diligent thing. Well, look, I think, Remington, I'm so grateful you came on. I know you're a busy guy. Especially with this big event coming up. We do have tickets to give, but first and foremost, one of the things I do want to say is Remington's been kind enough to give us a discount code. So if you go to rplevate.com and you go ahead and get your seats and your tickets, if you enter in the code webinar 50 into the checkout, you will get a discounted rate on those tickets to be in the room with some of the top producers in the country from September 29th and 30th in Dallas, Texas. Do it, sign up. And then again, we are going to be giving away 2 tickets. Watch for that on social, watch for that we'll probably get some ads in front of you. If you're not signed up for our newsletter, please sign up for that. It's going to be featured in that. And ultimately, we just want you to be in the room. We will be there. We will be there in a big way. And Remington, so grateful for you, man. Excited. If anybody needs to follow you, find you, where are they going to find you, man?
I usually funnel people through Instagram or LinkedIn because we do a lot of promotional for Real Producers brand on both of those platforms. And everything's geared towards September 29th and 30th in Dallas. Would love to have you there. That gets you 50% off any ticket, by the way. There's 3 different levels.
That's amazing.
GA, VIP, wow. And then if you want to meet Molly Bloom, you can do that at a discounted rate. So hope to see you there.
That's awesome. And it's Remington T. Ramsey on Instagram. So great, man. Well, look, great episode. Appreciate you coming in. Lots of value here. And I definitely think we need to get that before, during, and after event, Doc. So if you've got it, send it to us, and anyone that's looking for it, either shake Remington's hand at the event and grab it, or we'll find a way to get it to you.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Remington.
Awesome, guys. Thanks so much, Remington. Cheers.
Hey,
everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on the Speculo Live podcast. We are very grateful for your support as always. If you or someone that you know is interested to just get a consultation on how they're using AI in their real estate business, do not hesitate to hit us up through one of the links in our profile, or you can feel free to DM us on any one of the social channels. Stay tuned for more episodes, and make sure to like and subscribe to make sure that you get notified when our next podcast episode comes up. Thanks, guys.